I'm Abigail Mason, 34, and last week I stood in my father's kitchen wearing a tailored emerald dress and 4-inch heels, while a stranger offered me champagne and asked what I was doing back there. I had just been told to skip the front entrance and come around through the back to avoid clogging up the flow of guests at my father's 60th birthday party, and I did it without arguing heels sinking into gravel, while my stepmother smiled at the front door, welcoming neighbors like nothing was wrong. 5 minutes later, a woman I barely remembered changed everything with one sentence. "Abigail Mason, Madam CEO, what are you doing back here with the catering staff before I go any further? Let me know where you're listening from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to prove yourself to people who thought you'd never matter." I grew up in Maple Hill, Wisconsin, a small town where everyone waved from their porches and the church parking lot stayed full on Sundays. My childhood was quiet, bookish, happy. My mom taught first grade, and Dad ran his own home building business. The house I knew sat on a corner lot with blue shutters and a creaky porch swing. Every spring, Dad repainted those shutters like clockwork. Every evening, Mom read aloud while I curled against her side, and Dad tinkered with tools in the garage. We were a team, just the three of us. When Mom got sick, everything slowed and then unraveled. She passed away the spring I turned 12. We buried her on a Thursday, and by Monday, Dad was back at job sites. He told me that's what Mom would have wanted: routine, stability, strength. So I pretended to be strong too. I learned how to fold laundry, microwave dinner, and keep my voice steady when hers was missing from the house. Dad met Patricia at a church grief group. She was poised and put together, always smelled like lavender, and had 2 kids of her own. Ryan, who was 2 years older than me, and Jessica, born the same summer I was. When he brought them to dinner, I remember feeling nervous but hopeful. Patricia complimented our home, called me bright, and gave me a pink lip gloss. She said my dad had told her I was the little genius. For the first time in a long time, I felt noticed. 6 months later, Dad sold our house, and we moved into Patricia's big and polished with curved staircases and thick carpet. Ryan and Jessica got to keep their bedrooms. I was given the converted office next to the laundry room. I didn't complain, not at first. Patricia explained gently that her children were still healing from their father's death and change is hard. She said sacrifices make families strong. Dad nodded along, not looking at me. The pictures of my mom disappeared soon after. The ones in the hallway, the living room, even the one on the mantel. Her Christmas recipes were replaced, our traditions adjusted, and it happened so slowly that it was hard to find the line where grief ended and replacement began. Ryan got Dad's weekends football tools business talk. Jessica got the spotlight piano recitals, award banquets, glowing praise. I got quiet. I stayed late at school. I stopped asking to go fishing. I studied harder, won science fairs, applied to MIT. When I told them I got in, Patricia clapped politely. Dad said he was proud but worried I'd be far from home. The day I left, he pressed an envelope into my hand, $500, and a whisper, "Make me proud, kiddo." I didn't know then that would be the last time we spoke freely for years. The next chapter of my life began with 2 oversized suitcases and a dorm bed that didn't quite fit under the window. I worked 3 jobs and took 18 credits a semester. Computer science came naturally to me like a language I already knew. I built something from nothing. 1 internship, 1 algorithm, 1 late night at a time. When I got my first round of venture funding, I flew home to visit. I shared my plans over dinner, talking fast about product design and market gaps. Patricia nodded, then said Ryan's job in construction was much more stable. Dad agreed, adding that security matters more than ambition in the long run. That night, I changed my return flight to leave early, and for 5 years, I didn't look back. But then his birthday invitation came, a card printed on heavy paper with gold edges. No note, no love, Dad, just the event details, and a request to please RSVP by Friday. I didn't plan to go, not at first. But part of me, some old unfinished part, needed to see for myself if anything had changed. I packed 1 bag. I chose a modest but meaningful gift. And I flew home to Maple Hill, to the house that was never mine, and the people who never quite saw me. The house hadn't changed much, not in the ways that mattered. The exterior was freshly painted sage green, Patricia's favorite shade, but Inside, the energy was still hers. Her furniture, her style, her photographs lined the hallways. I followed her through the foyer, past framed pictures of Ryan's wedding, Jessica's kids in matching pajamas, her and Dad on a boat somewhere warm. My graduation photo was nowhere to be seen. She told me where everyone was staying, like she was organizing a hotel. Ryan and Amanda had the East Suite. Jessica's family would get the bigger guest room when they arrived. I was in the blue room, tucked under the eaves, the one that used to hold storage bins. I nodded and followed her up the stairs. When she opened the door, I looked around the cramped space. A twin bed, a dresser with one drawer slightly off track, and a shared bathroom down the hall. The walls were pale blue, the bedspread floral. Patricia asked if it would be suitable, and I said it was fine. I told her I wouldn't be staying long. She lingered in the doorway, asking casually if I still ate those Boston things, kale, quinoa, all that trendy food. I smiled and said I still like cheese curds. Her smile tightened. Well, we're having pot roast tonight. Ryan's favorite. After she left, I unpacked. The closet door stuck when I tried to open it. I didn't bother forcing it. From the hallway, I heard the sounds of kids laughing, Amanda's voice calling out for someone to please stop jumping on the bed. Patricia's voice followed, warm and cheerful. I sat on the edge of the twin bed and stared at the floor. Dinner was already underway by the time Jessica and Tyler arrived with their children. Jessica looked like a polished version of her mother, flawless hair, expensive jewelry, a quiet confidence that filled a room without effort. Her kids were well-dressed, well-behaved, and clearly used to being praised. Ryan held court at the dining table, talking about a new project at the hospital. "Dad's letting me take point on it," he said, pushing his plate aside. "It's the biggest one we've landed yet." Patricia beamed. "Your father has basically retired in all but name. Ryan handles the important work now." Dad smiled faintly and nodded. He looked tired, like he wasn't sure when that transition had even happened. Eventually, the attention shifted toward me. Patricia turned to me with practiced curiosity. "And how is your computer work going, Abigail? Still with that startup?" Before I could answer, Jessica jumped in. "I saw something on the news about women in tech struggling to get funding. Is that affecting you?" I said I was doing well, but Patricia cut me off. "Abigail's always been so independent," she said with a light laugh. "Never needed family connections the way others might." She glanced at Tyler and Ryan, and I felt the tension ripple down the table. I kept eating. Dad didn't say much. When I tried to draw him into conversation, he let Patricia speak for him. She corrected his stories, clarified what he meant, or redirected questions with a smile. After dessert, I started gathering dishes. In the kitchen, I could hear Jessica and Tyler talking in the living room. I looked up. "Her company," Tyler said, his voice low. "If it's the one I think it is, it's actually pretty significant," Jessica replied. "Mom says she exaggerates. You know how Abby always needed attention." I stood there holding a serving spoon, staring at the sink. I didn't feel angry, just tired. After everything, they still thought I was just a girl, desperate for someone to clap. Later, I tried to talk to Dad alone. I found him in the study, flipping through a binder Patricia had labeled party planning. Before I could say much, she came in asking him to confirm flower arrangements. "I'll need both of you ready by 6, she said to me, flipping through a checklist. "Photos are first." That night, I lay in the blue room with the blanket pulled up to my chest. I thought about booking an earlier flight. I had nothing left to prove. The idea of walking out without another word felt clean easy. But Dad's birthday was tomorrow, just one more day. The morning came bright and cool. I went downstairs hoping to catch Dad before things got busy. Patricia was already there overseeing caterers. She didn't look up when she greeted me. "Coffee's in the carafe. No breakfast, I'm afraid everything's in prep mode." I asked if Dad was around. "He left early with Ryan," she said, checking a list. "Errands. The party starts at 7. Photos are at 6. Please be dressed." I offered to help with setup, but she waved me off. The professionals know what they're doing. I took my coffee and left the house. I drove around town for hours past places that used to mean something. My elementary school, the old diner with the jukebox, the library where I used to sit on the floor between the shelves. I stopped at a little cafe. The owner recognized me from a magazine article her daughter had clipped. "Abigail Mason," she said, wrapping me in a warm hug. Your mother would have been so proud." I drove back feeling steadier. I showered, did my makeup, and pulled on the emerald dress I'd packed for the occasion. I added earrings, nothing flashy, just enough to remind myself who I was. Downstairs, the photographer was already setting up. Patricia was directing people into place. Ryan, Jessica, their families. Everyone posed and smiling. "You've missed most of the family photos," Patricia called when she saw me. "We had to start without you." I checked my watch. I was 10 minutes early. "Well, we're finished now," she said. "Guests will be arriving any minute." Dad looked at me, then down at his shoes. I stepped back. The house was transformed. The furniture had been rearranged. Soft music played. Caterers circled with trays of drinks. Outside, I could see guests arriving, neighbors, old co-workers, people I hadn't seen in years. I headed toward the front hall to join the greeting line. Patricia spotted me and intercepted. "Abigail." "There you are," she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "The front is getting congested. Would you mind using the back garden door? It leads right to the party area." I blinked. "You want me to go outside and come in through the back?" "It's just more practical," she said. "Richard's overwhelmed with all the people coming through at once." Before I could reply, she turned away to greet a new couple walking through the front door. I stood still. I could hear the music smell, the food, feel the sting rising behind my eyes. Then I turned, walked to the side door, and stepped outside. The gravel path crunched beneath my heels. The back entrance she mentioned wasn't the elegant French doors. It was the service entrance off the kitchen. When I stepped inside, a few catering staff looked up, startled to see someone in formal wear. "Can I help you?" one of them asked. I said, "Apparently this is my designated entrance." They shifted trays and gave me space to pass. In the narrow corridor between the kitchen and dining room, I stopped. The hum of voices drifted from the main room. The smell of rosemary and butter filled the air. I pressed my hands to my face and tried to steady my breath. I wasn't 15 anymore. I wasn't a guest in my own life. Then I heard her voice. From just beyond the doorway, Patricia laughed. I simply couldn't have her coming through the front with the Wilsons arriving. She always has to make everything about herself. I stayed perfectly still. The air felt thin, the walls closer than they were. And that's when the door behind me creaked open. A familiar voice followed. Calm, clear, surprised. "Abigail Mason, Madam CEO. What on earth are you doing back here with the catering staff?" Eleanor Wellington looked me over with sharp, familiar eyes. She hadn't changed much. Same upright posture, same rich navy dress, same presence that drew every eye without asking for attention. "I read your profile in Forbes last month," she said, stepping in beside me like we were old friends. "You're doing extraordinary work with Mason Tech. Our company started using your software last quarter. Our client retention numbers jumped almost overnight." I managed a quiet thank you. My voice felt distant in my own ears. Behind her, through the open doorway, several guests had turned. Eleanor's voice carried clearly, and when she spoke again, linking her arm through mine, she did so with cheerful insistence. "Come now, you must meet a few folks. I won't have our most accomplished guest hiding back here with the appetizers." We stepped into the dining room. Patricia stood frozen beside the credenza, a tray of napkins in her hands, her lips parted slightly. Eyes locked on Eleanor's arm looped around mine. She didn't move or speak, just stared. Eleanor continued talking, animated now. "This young woman is transforming how business is done. Her platform is saving companies millions. Real-time behavior prediction, brilliant stuff." She turned to a group nearby. "Richard, did you know your daughter's company supports government agencies?" Now Dad was standing with two guests, mid-conversation. He turned toward us slowly. I couldn't read his face, something between surprise and something else. It took him a moment to speak. "You're working with government contracts?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. "We're expanding next quarter." Patricia stepped beside him. "Well, isn't that something she said? So proud of our little tech girl." Eleanor tilted her head. "Little Patricia, her company was valued at $200 million last spring. That's hardly small potatoes." More faces turned. More names floated toward me, people I hadn't seen since high school, old colleagues of Dad's women from church groups. One man said his brother's company used our software in Chicago. Another remembered seeing a TED Talk I'd given on ethical data use. Each sentence added weight, drawing attention in a way I hadn't expected. Eleanor never left my side. She guided conversations, translated technical jargon into plain language when needed. She made space for me to speak, and when I did, people listened. Dad stood near the fireplace, glass in hand, watching it unfold. I saw him nod as someone approached him, pointing toward me. Patricia hovered close, whispering in his ear, but he didn't respond right away. Later, he made his way over to where Eleanor and I were talking. "Could we talk for a moment?" he asked, tilting his head toward the study. I followed him across the room. The house was still full, but the noise felt far away. The study door closed softly behind us. The shelves looked the same, lined with books about architecture leadership and half-read biographies. He stood beside the window for a moment, hands in his pockets. "I had no idea," he said finally. "Not just about the company, about all of it." I didn't answer right away. I watched him try to find words. "I remember when you called about your first funding round," he said, "and that magazine you sent. I read the article, but I guess I didn't really see what it meant." I nodded just once. "I let Patricia tell the story for too long," he said, "and I believed it." Before I could respond, the door creaked open again. Patricia stepped in, clipboard in hand. "Richard, they're ready for the cake and speeches." She looked at me quickly. "Everything all right in here?" "We were just talking," he said. There was something firmer in his tone. "We'll join in a moment," I added. She paused, one hand on the doorframe. "Quite a stir you've caused tonight, Abigail. Who would have thought the computer girl would be the belle of the ball?" Her smile was tight. "Technology touches everything these days," I said. "Even here." Dad looked between us, brow furrowing slightly. "Patricia, could you give us another minute?" Her expression faltered. "The caterers are waiting." "Just a minute," he said again. She closed the door, not gently. He turned to me. "There's a lot I need to say. I don't want to do it here, not tonight." I nodded. "We'll find time." He reached out, squeezing my hand once before we stepped back into the hallway. Something subtle had shifted. I felt it in the way people greeted me. I caught Ryan watching from the staircase, a question in his eyes. Jessica's husband came over and asked about our new product line. Patricia tried to steer conversation elsewhere, but people noticed now. During his birthday speech, Dad thanked everyone for coming. Then he paused, clearing his throat. "I'm proud of all 3 of my kids," he said, "and especially proud of Abigail for what she's built. I'm only starting to understand it, but it's extraordinary." A few people clapped. I looked across the room and saw Patricia's face smiling, but not fully. The party ended just after midnight. Eleanor hugged me before she left and slipped a card into my hand. "When you're in town again," she said, "we're always looking for strong minds on the Wellington Industries board." The invitation was warm, quiet, sincere. When the last guests left, the house settled. Jessica and Tyler packed up their kids. Ryan and Amanda moved toward the stairs. The lights dimmed, and the silence that followed held something heavier than exhaustion. Patricia moved around the room, picking up napkins that the catering crew would soon take care of. Dad sat in his leather armchair, the one that had once been in our old living room. His posture was slouched, but his eyes were alert. "Well," Patricia said, "to no one in particular, that was a success. Everyone who matters was here." Ryan paused near the stairwell. "People seem pretty impressed with Abby," he said. "Wellington Industries is no joke." Patricia's tone cooled. "Eleanor's always liked taking an interest in local girls. She implemented our software after reviewing 6 competitors," I said. "It wasn't personal, it was a business decision." Dad looked over at me, then back to Patricia. "I'd like to talk to Abby for a few minutes. Alone." Patricia froze. "It's late. Wouldn't tomorrow be better?" "I don't mind," I said. "Now is fine." Ryan stepped back down. "Amanda and I should head up anyway. Big day." He paused, looking at me. "It was good seeing you actually get some recognition tonight." He and Amanda disappeared up the stairs. Patricia lingered. "I'll make tea," she said. "We could all use something calming." She moved toward the kitchen. Dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I didn't know about the back door," he said. "I would never have allowed that." "You've allowed a lot of things," I said. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly. "I told myself you didn't need the attention, that you were strong, like your mother." He looked toward the kitchen where Patricia clattered quietly. "But the truth is, I let her run things, and I disappeared into it because it was easier than standing up for you. The kitchen door opened again. Patricia returned, carrying a tray with 3 cups. She passed one to Dad, sweetened with honey, just how he liked. "What are we discussing so seriously?" she asked, setting a cup in front of me. Dad looked at her directly. "I was telling Abigail I failed her as a father." She nearly dropped the cup. "Richard, that's a terrible thing to say. You've done nothing but support her." "Have I?" he asked. "When was the last time I called, just to ask about her life?" He turned to me, or visited her in Boston, or asked about her company. She set the tray down with a bit too much force. "This is hardly the time. It's exactly the time I said." She looked at me. Her voice softened slightly. "Abigail, I understand you're feeling emotional after receiving some attention tonight." "Don't do that," I said. "Don't minimize what I feel. Not anymore." The room was quiet. The moment sat between us, waiting. "I heard you," I said, "when you laughed about me using the back door." Dad's head snapped toward her. "You did what he asked." Patricia started to explain, but her voice faltered. "It was just, there were a lot of people at the front. You've been making me invisible in this family for years," I said. "1,000 small things, and you know it." Patricia's mouth opened slightly. She didn't answer right away. "I've always treated you like one of my own," she said. "No," I said. "You haven't." And this time, no one tried to argue. Ryan stood by the doorway, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone. He glanced from me to Patricia, his expression uncertain. "Is that true?" he asked. "That Mom had you use the back entrance?" I nodded once. She said the front was too crowded. But she told someone afterward she couldn't have me arriving while the Wilsons were pulling up. Patricia's mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes shifted to Dad, who hadn't moved from the armchair. "She always finds a way to make things dramatic," Patricia said. "I was trying to help the event go smoothly." Ryan stepped further into the room. "I heard people talking about it. Tyler said it was weird, too." From the hallway, Jessica's voice followed. "It was awful." She appeared behind Ryan Hare, down still in silk pajamas. "I thought she was a guest helping the caterers," she added, "until I saw her shoes." Patricia looked at her sharply. "Jessica, this isn't your concern." "It kind of is," Jessica said, stepping into the room. "It's Dad's birthday, and we've all been pretending things are fine for a long time." Dad sat forward, elbows on his knees, silent. "You said you always treated me like your own," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I wasn't in the family photos. I was assigned the smallest room. You cut me off every time I tried to share anything about my work." "You chose distance," Patricia said quickly. "You left us. You built your own life and stopped coming around. I stopped coming because every visit made it clear I wasn't welcome." I replied. "I wasn't asking to be celebrated. I just didn't want to be erased." Jessica leaned against the arm of the sofa. "Mom, remember when Abigail sent that magazine, the one with her interview, you threw it away." Patricia's jaw tightened. It was cluttering the table. Ryan added quietly, "And when she called about the big investment round, you told Dad it was probably just PR spin, that it didn't mean much." Dad turned to her slowly. "You said that Patricia didn't answer right away." She stood near the bookshelf, hands clasped too tightly. "I didn't want anyone getting their hopes up," she said. "She was off building something we weren't a part of. I was trying to protect you." From what Jessica asked. Success. From your own jealousy. The room fell quiet again. No one moved. Patricia looked at me. "You were always going to leave Abigail. From the very beginning I knew it. You were smart, focused, independent, just like your mother." Dad turned in his chair. "So you shut her out before she could leave on her own." "I was afraid," Patricia admitted, voice low. "Richard always looked at you with so much pride. I thought you'd convince him to start putting you first again." The honesty hung in the air, not gentle, not graceful, but honest. "I never wanted to take anything away from you," I said. "I just didn't want to lose my place as his daughter." Dad rubbed a hand over his face, then looked up. "I let it happen," he said. "I convinced myself that keeping peace was better than speaking up." No one corrected him. He stood, walked to the window, then turned around slowly. "I failed all of you. I failed Abigail most of all. And I don't know if I can fix that, but I want to try." Patricia moved toward him. "Richard, you're exhausted. Maybe we should. He stepped back gently. It's time. She sat down heavily, her posture slack for the first time all night. I didn't speak. I waited. Patricia turned to me. What do you want from me? Truth, I said. And a willingness to change, that's all. She nodded once. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't dismissive. Ryan exhaled. You know I've always envied you, he said. You had the guts to leave. You built something on your own. No safety net. No family business waiting for you. I used to envy you too, I said. You got to keep Dad. I just got the phone calls. Jessica gave a short, dry laugh. Well, this is depressing. Happy birthday, Dad. For a moment, we all smiled, just barely. It wasn't peace, but it was a pause. Dad sat beside me on the couch. He took my hand. I don't want the watered-down version anymore, he said. I want to know you, all of it. I'd like that, I answered. But things have to change. They will, he said. Then looked toward Patricia, who gave a small nod without speaking. The house grew still. Ryan and Jessica excused themselves, each stopping to give me quiet, awkward hugs before heading upstairs. Patricia rose and left without a word. Her footsteps were lighter than usual. Dad lingered, watching the last candle flicker on the table. I'm proud of you, Abigail, he said finally. Not for what you built, but for holding on, for finding your own way when we failed you. He pulled me into a hug, the kind I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. Outside, the trees shifted in the wind. The house, once so loud, was quiet now. We didn't say anything else that night, but something had started, something real. The morning after the party, I came downstairs earlier than usual, expecting a quiet kitchen and a chance to slip out unnoticed. Instead, I found Dad at the counter pouring coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. The same red coffee tin sat by the sink, same brand he'd used for years. He looked up and gave a small smile. I figured you might be up. I nodded. Some habits stick. We took our mugs out to the back patio. The chairs creaked a little as we sat watching sunlight drift through the trees. It was the first time we'd been alone since the night before. I've been seeing someone, Dad said after a while. A therapist. I turned toward him surprised. Started about 6 months ago, he continued. Thought it might help me understand why everything feels like it's been slipping. I took a slow sip of coffee. Is it helping? He nodded. Not easy, but necessary. He stared into his mug for a moment. He's been asking about you. Why we're not close. Why we only talk at holidays. I didn't say anything right away. I told him you were busy, he said. That success had changed you. That you'd outgrown us. I waited, letting him finish. But that wasn't true. I changed. I stopped asking, stopped showing up, let Patricia take the lead, and convinced myself I was protecting everyone. He looked over, voice quieter now. I wasn't protecting anything. I was just afraid. We sat in silence for a moment. I used to be angry, I said. Then I was hurt. Eventually, I just got tired of hoping things would change. He nodded slowly. I told Patricia I want us to try couples counseling, he said. Whatever happens with us, it's bigger than last night. It's about 20 years of patterns. How did she take that? I asked. His mouth twitched. About how you'd expect. But she agreed. I think last night shook her. We talked for a long time. He asked questions about my company, about Boston, about the life I'd built. I answered honestly, not the filtered version I used to offer. In return, he spoke openly about his marriage, how much he'd compromised to keep it afloat, how often he'd turned away instead of speaking up. I thought keeping peace meant avoiding conflict, he said. Turns out it just meant avoiding growth. By the time we finished our coffee, the house was beginning to stir. We stood together in the kitchen while he rinsed the mugs. I'd like to visit, he said. Come to Boston, see your life, if that's something you'd want. I'd like that, I said. Though fair warning, the guest room is a lot bigger than the blue room, and no one's going to root you through the service entrance. He laughed quietly. Fair enough. Later, as I packed my things, Patricia knocked lightly on the bedroom door. Her hair wasn't as styled as usual, and the skin beneath her eyes showed a restless night. May I come in? She asked. I nodded, folding a blouse and placing it in my suitcase. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped in her lap. "I won't insult you with a big apology," she said. "What happened over the years can't be undone with words." "No," I said. "It can't." "I was wrong," she continued. "Insecure. I can see that now, even if I don't always know how to change it." I closed the suitcase and zipped it halfway. "I don't know if we'll ever be close," I told her, "but I think we can be respectful. For Dad's sake, and for our own peace." She nodded. "Richard mentioned you agreed to him visiting Boston." "I did." There was a pause. "You would be welcome too," I added, "if you wanted to come." She looked surprised, and for a moment unsure how to respond. "I'll consider it," she said. "Thank you." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. The drive back to Madison was quiet. Same roads, same trees, same diner signs, but they felt different now. Not because the scenery had changed, but because I had. Back in Boston, the rhythm of work picked up again, meetings, deadlines, product reviews, but something was different in me, something subtle. I found myself listening more closely during team calls, making space for quieter voices in meetings, noticing who felt left out. I didn't talk about the birthday weekend, not right away, but the lessons from it found their way into how I led. Dad began calling every week, sometimes just to check in. Other times to ask real questions about new hires, about challenges I was facing, about where I saw the company heading. He sent photos, too. Old pictures he'd kept in a desk drawer, me as a toddler with my mom us fishing by the lake birthdays, where I'd forgotten the color of the cake. Each one arrived with a short note in his handwriting. Just a sentence or two, enough to say I remember. "I see you." 2 months after the party, Ryan called. We hadn't talked much since I left. "I've been thinking," he said, "about starting my own company, focused on sustainable materials, green construction." "That's a big shift," I said. He hesitated. "Seeing you stand your ground made me realize I've been waiting around for Dad's approval instead of carving my own path." We started texting every few weeks, business questions, book recommendations, updates about permits and project bids. It was slow, but it felt real. 6 months after the party, Dad came to visit. Patricia didn't join him. Prior commitment, she said, but I think we both knew what that meant. He stayed 3 days, toured our office, met my leadership team. I watched his eyes take in the way my staff spoke to me, the trust, the ease, the pride. On the last day, as we walked through the innovation lab, he paused near the whiteboard where a team had mapped out our next product phase. "Your mother would have loved this," he said. "She always said you'd change the world." We stood there for a long time. He didn't try to say more, and he didn't need to. That visit changed something between us. From then on, our conversations became consistent, real, without the weight of old obligations. He brought up my work at gatherings back home. He told people what I was building, not just where I lived. Patricia remained polite, careful. But I noticed her tone soften when others brought up my name. The silence that used to fill those moments was gone. She and Dad kept going to therapy. He didn't tell me much, just that it was slow but honest. 1 year after his 60th birthday, I hosted his 61st in Boston. It was smaller, no catering staff, no grand speeches, just a simple dinner on my patio overlooking the city. Ryan flew in. Jessica sent a video message with the kids. Even Patricia made an appearance, though she stayed mostly quiet. After everyone left, Dad and I sat out under the stars. He swirled the last inch of scotch in his glass. Last year, I thought I had everything he said. The house, the perfect party, the image. He looked over at me, but I was more disconnected than I'd ever been. And now... He didn't finish the sentence, so I did. Now it's real. He raised his glass slightly, to reality, and to showing up for it. The wind shifted softly through the trees. I didn't need to say anything else. 2 weeks after Dad's visit, I got a package at the office. Inside were 3 photographs, all carefully labeled in his handwriting. One was me at 4, sitting on Mom's lap beside a jack-o'-lantern we'd carved. One was the 2 of us fishing, his arm steady around my shoulder as I held a sunfish. And the third, my graduation from MIT. A copy I'd forgotten existed. Tucked between the photos was a note I found these in the drawer I used to keep locked. "Thought they belonged with you now. That night, I left work early and walked home slowly, letting the air settle something inside me. I placed the photos on my bookshelf not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that some things do come back, even if they return in quiet pieces. The following month, Ryan called again. Got a lead on an architect who specializes in eco-materials, he said, thinking about pitching to a developer upstate. I'm nervous, though. Dad offered to invest if I move forward. I leaned back in my chair. You want him involved, I do, he said, but not the way it used to be where he steers everything and I just follow. I want him to see me as someone who can build something, not just take over what he started. There was a long pause before he added, I think watching you helped me realize I've been waiting for permission I didn't need. A few days later, I got an email from Jessica. Short, direct. I've started therapy. Mom doesn't know. I don't know what I'm hoping to fix exactly, but I'm tired of measuring myself against her. I replied that I understood, that sometimes what we fix isn't the past, but the grip it still has. Dad and Patricia's therapy sessions continued. He didn't share details, just said they were having honest conversations for the first time in years. One evening during our weekly call, he told me something I hadn't expected to hear. We're sleeping in separate rooms for now, he said, trying to figure out who we are when no one's performing for anyone else. I didn't know what to say. He didn't need me to. The fall passed quietly. Work picked up. Mason Tech hired 15 new people across 2 offices. I gave a keynote at a national conference and flew home that weekend just to rest. That Sunday morning, I opened my front door to find Patricia on the porch. She wore a charcoal coat and held a paper bag from a bakery down the street. She smiled a little unsure. I thought maybe I could join you for coffee. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat at the kitchen island while the coffee brewed. She unpacked scones from the bag, placed one in front of each of us, and folded the bag neatly, as if that small order helped her stay steady. I'm not here to smooth things over, she said. I know better now, but I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and about what I did. I poured her coffee without saying anything. When I married your father, I told myself I was building something new, she continued. But I was really just protecting what I thought I could control, and I let that fear define how I treated you. She took a sip of coffee before going on. I don't expect you to forget the things I did. I just hope eventually you might believe that I'm trying. I nodded once. I believe that. She stayed for an hour. We didn't talk about the past much, just work and the neighborhood and how different Boston was from Maple Hill. Before she left, she paused at the door. Richard says he wants to plan next year's holidays with your input, she said. He wants to split time fairly, include everyone. He said you offered your home if people wanted to come here. I did, I said. The invitation still stands. She nodded, then looked at me squarely. Thank you for not shutting the door, Abigail. You would have had every right. After she left, I stood by the window for a long time watching her cross the street toward a waiting car. Later that month, I spoke at an industry panel on leadership and retention. The moderator asked about internal company culture and how to keep teams aligned through growth. I found myself talking about belonging, not as a corporate value, but as a need, as something built with repetition and listening and presence. Afterward, one of my senior engineers approached me in the hallway. She said she'd been thinking about applying elsewhere not because she didn't like the work, but because she didn't feel seen. We scheduled a one-on-one the next morning. That conversation led to changes in how we ran feedback meetings and tracked team contributions. Small things, quiet shifts. And yet, by spring, Mason Tech posted its lowest turnover rate in 5 years. The shift was measurable. Dad called on a Tuesday evening in March. He was walking around the neighborhood and said the trees were just starting to bud. Feels like the first real spring in a long time, he said. And not just outside. I told him I'd been thinking the same. The next day, Jessica sent a text that made me stop mid-step on my way to a meeting. Mom asked me how your talk went, said she read about it online. She didn't make a comment, just said it looked like something important. I saved the message, not because I needed the approval, but because it marked something, a shift in the current. And I knew there was more still to come. It was early October when Dad called and asked if I'd be willing to host Thanksgiving. He said it plainly, no build-up, just asked as if it were the most natural thing in the world. We've always done it here, he said, but this year, It feels like a fresh start might be better. I paused before answering. If everyone's open to it, I'd love that. He told me he'd talk to the others. That same week, I started sketching out a plan. Nothing extravagant, just space for conversation, a big table and food that felt familiar without being heavy. Ryan confirmed first. Amanda and the kids would be joining, and he offered to bring pies from a local bakery near their new place. Jessica emailed a few days later. She didn't say much, only that she and Tyler would drive in Wednesday night and get a hotel nearby. Patricia was the last to reply. Her message was brief. If Richard believes this is the best place to be, then I will be there. Thank you for opening your home. I read it twice, not sure what to expect, but I added 2 extra chairs to the table and made a mental note to pick up decaf tea. The night before Thanksgiving, Ryan helped me bring folding chairs up from the basement, while Amanda made name cards with their kids at the kitchen island. Laughter filled the rooms in a way I hadn't experienced in years. It didn't feel like hosting. It felt like something new trying to take root. Jessica and Tyler arrived around 7 Huzzahs. They looked tired but relaxed. Tyler carried a tray of stuffing wrapped in foil. Jessica gave me a hug at the door. "Thanks for having us," she said. "It's good to be somewhere neutral." I smiled. "You're always welcome." Patricia and Dad arrived Thanksgiving morning. She wore a dark green blouse and carried a cranberry sauce she'd made from scratch. Dad looked rested and at ease, more like the man I remembered from childhood than he had in years. We kept things simple. Everyone brought something. I roasted the turkey. Ryan handled the drinks. Jessica took over the playlist. The meal went on for hours, slow, comfortable, unhurried. No speeches, no structured activities, just stories, laughter, and occasional silence that didn't feel awkward. After dessert, we moved to the living room. The kids played on the floor while the adults sipped coffee and tea. Patricia sat quietly on the end of the couch, watching. Eventually, she spoke. "This has been different," she said. "In a good way." We all looked toward her. "I didn't grow up with this kind of openness," she continued. "My family didn't talk about hard things. We kept moving forward whether we liked where we were headed or not." She glanced toward me. "I've spent a long time trying to preserve something that wasn't working. And in the process, I hurt people I should have cherished." No one interrupted her. The room felt still but not tense. "I know I've said this before, Abigail, but I mean it differently now. Thank you for making space for all of us." I nodded. "Thank you for being here." Dad set his mug down gently. "I think we're learning," he said, "that showing up means more than just being in the room. It means doing the hard parts, too." Jessica shifted in her seat. "We've all been avoiding the hard parts, not just you two." Ryan looked around. "I think we just never thought it could be different." That night, after everyone left or settled into nearby hotels, Dad stayed behind to help me clean up. We worked in a rhythm dishes, leftover containers, folding napkins. When we finished, he sat at the counter and looked around. "You made something here," he said. "Not just a home, something stronger than what we had before." I sat across from him. "It's not perfect." "No," he said, "but it's honest." He told me Patricia had started attending therapy on her own, that she still had hard days, but that she was trying to unlearn some of the things she thought were necessary. She told me he said that she wants to build trust, not manage appearances. The words sat heavy for a moment. I asked if he thought things between them were healing. He looked toward the window where the city lights flickered against the dark glass. "I think we're choosing to try," he said. "That's all I know." The next morning, I woke early and sat on the balcony with a blanket and coffee. It was still quiet when Patricia stepped out and joined me. She brought her own mug and didn't say anything at first. The city moved beneath us, slow, steady, unaware. "I always thought strength meant control," she said softly, "that if I kept everything polished and in order, it would hold." She looked at me directly. "But watching you, I see now that real strength leaves room for other people to breathe." We sat in silence after that. The sun rose slow and pale behind the buildings. Before she went back inside, she paused at the door. "I hope we keep building something," she said, "even if it's not what any of us pictured." I nodded. "So do I." As she left, I realized the tension I'd always carried around her had loosened. Not gone, but different. Not everything had been said. Not everything had been solved. But we were facing each other now, and that mattered. That winter, the patterns of our family settled into something quieter and truer. Dad started coming to Boston for long weekends, sometimes on his own, sometimes with Patricia. He never brought up the old house, never pushed for big gatherings, just found comfort in simple things like helping me cook breakfast or sharing stories from his childhood I'd never heard before. Ryan's business took off, and our calls shifted from tentative advice to true back and forth. He sent photos of his first completed project, proud in a way that was about the work, not about pleasing anyone else. Jessica started inviting me to her therapy milestones, sometimes just by text, and every so often we'd meet halfway for lunch and walk along the river, letting the past move behind us. Patricia never became a close friend, but she stopped being an obstacle. When she visited, she helped set the table, listened instead of directing, and offered small, sincere gestures. She'd ask about my work or hand me a recipe card she thought I might like. There was a quiet truce, earned, not forced. For Dad's next birthday, we kept things simple. No formal invitations, no speeches, no expectations. Just the people who mattered, crowded around my kitchen table, passing dishes, and laughing at old memories. I realized then that family wasn't about the house or the history, but the choice to keep showing up even when it's difficult. Looking back, I know I once believed that success would fix everything. I thought recognition from the outside world would fill the space left by old hurts. But what changed most was something less visible. I learned that healing doesn't always mean perfect understanding or easy forgiveness. It means making room for others even when the past is heavy. The moment Eleanor Wellington called me Madam CEO in that crowded kitchen was a turning point. Not because it changed who I was, but because it forced everyone else to finally see me for who I'd become. In the end, justice didn't look like vindication. It looked like honesty, boundaries, and the slow, sometimes halting rebuilding of trust. If you've ever felt unseen by the people you love or wondered if dignity could be reclaimed after years of quiet hurt, know this. There's no single moment of arrival. It's the day-by-day choice to stand in your own truth, to forgive as you're able, and to welcome the small steps forward. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, I hope you'll share your thoughts below or simply hold them close for your own journey. And if you'd like to hear more stories of quiet strength, you're always welcome here.